Now, new lockdown rules this week with the reintroduction of the alcohol sales ban and the curfew. Also firming up on the wearing of masks in public. The new regulations were gazetted speedily, but will they pass muster if challenged in court? You'll be aware that the High Court in Pretoria ruled recently that lockdown regulations have to be rational and in line with the Constitution. And tomorrow, the independent tobacco producers are seeking leave to appeal the tobacco sales ban. In a world strange and new, how easy is it to keep the rules sensible? Let's discuss this now with constitutional law expert Pierre de Vos. Good evening, Pierre. A very interesting article that you wrote in the Daily Maverick today. You go through the new rules. Let's chat first about the most talking point issue, the alcohol sales ban. Surely that's an easy one to justify as rational, given the spike in alcohol-related trauma cases when the ban was lifted after the first period of lockdown.
Yes, with these things, if it is not actually limiting one of the rights contained in the Constitution, the only thing you have to show as the government is that there is some kind of rational connection between the rule and what you're trying to achieve with the lockdown, namely to slow the spread of the virus and to save lives. And given the fact that there seems to be a lot of evidence that many people take up hospital beds because they get drunk and then they do bad things, I think one can show that there is a rational connection between the two. You don't have to show that it's the best option. You only have to show that it makes sense because it will actually have an effect, at least possibly have an effect on the outcome.
Okay. Now let's move on to the curfew. Is that rational, constitutional? I think the thinking behind the curfew is that at night, that's when things can go a little haywire, and that's often when we see these alcohol-related incidents.
Yes, so the problem with the curfew is that for that you have to show more than rationality, because when you say to people they cannot go out of their houses, you are limiting their right to freedom of movement, which is one of the rights guaranteed in the Constitution. It clearly is a limit, so then you have to ask, is it justified? And you have to ask, is there no other way of achieving the purpose that is going to infringe on people's rights in a less dramatic way? And so in that context, I think it's not going to be so easy to justify the ban. Yes, the curfew will maybe have an effect, but it infringes on your right. And so it must be very difficult to justify that. And are there not any other way in which the government could achieve this? For example, enforcing the law more effectively or doing other things as they have done, like imposing an alcohol ban.
So that might be one that is vulnerable to being challenged in court.
Yes, indeed, because it is about infringement of your actual rights. So that is courts are much more critical of legislation or regulations that take away your rights than they are of the other kind of things that are not nice to do, that is uncomfortable for people, but is not infringing on the right.
What about the taxis issue? They can now load 100%, keep the windows open, wear the mask. Some people are saying that's not rational. You can't even visit your family yet. But surely the rationale there is that taxis have to keep on the road because it keeps our economy going. Visiting your family is not necessary to keeping our economy going. Does it pass the rationality test?
Yes, well, this is a bit difficult. Obviously, personally, I think that it is a highly irresponsible thing to do because it is very dangerous, because people will get sick many people will get sick if they're in a taxi. What the government will say is the purpose here is that we need to have the economy going. We need to get people to where they are. In South Africa, most people don't have cars, and so this is the only way of travel. And if they say the purpose here is actually to make sure that people get to and from their jobs, it's probably rational. Once again, because the rationality standard is really very easy to meet, and it's not very difficult for the government to show.
But then we get into what I'm calling the what about rule, because people are going to go, oh, so we have to keep our economy going, we have to keep the taxis on the road. What about the alcohol industry? That's shut down. That's having a massive impact on industries. So what about that?
So there you're confusing policy decisions with what is legally valid. One can make an argument and say it is idiotic to do the one and not the other. That's a political argument. But when the courts ask this, they don't look at the other rules. They don't do whataboutery. They say, is there a purpose for this rule, and is there some rational link between the rule and the purpose? If there is, that is fine. And the ban on alcohol clearly meet that test.
Okay, what about tobacco? That's back in court tomorrow. The independent tobacco producers are asking for leave to appeal. Many have said that is not a rational ban. We know, however, that the science is not clear on whether smoking increases your health risks if you get COVID-19. What's your sense of how in line in terms of rationality that regulation is?
Yeah, so the High Court has already ruled on this and said that it is perfectly in line with the requirements of rationality. I personally am not so sure, and the reason is this. The government is saying it is bad for you to smoke. It is unhealthy. We know that. Unhealthy people are more likely to be at risk of COVID-19. That is also true. But what they haven't shown is that if they impose that ban, when they impose that ban, it is actually going to make any difference. If you stop smoking for 3 or 4 weeks, or if you buy your cigarettes illegally, is that going to make you less likely to die from COVID-19? There is no evidence for that. So I think the appeal for the ban on smoking, whether it will work, I don't know, but there is an argument to be made in favor of the fact that this is irrational.
And then can you clarify the issue of masks? Because it's now very clear that we have to wear masks in public. It's very rational why we should wear masks. We've seen the science. But I'm not sure if it's a criminal offence not to wear a mask.
Yeah, the regulations say that you are required to wear a mask whenever you're in public, except, of course, if you do vigorous exercise. We don't know what vigorous exercise is. The criminal imposition or ban is not on the person wearing the mask. It's on the people who are running the taxi, running the store that you go into, running the office, running the hospital or the school. If they do not take reasonable steps to ensure everybody in that premise wears a mask, they are liable to be found guilty of a criminal offence and can be sent to jail for up to 6 months. But the individual person, there's no criminal prohibition on them, but it's just an instruction. It's a bit like a parking ticket. You have to do it, but you're not going to get a criminal offence if you don't.
Okay, so just to be clear, institutions, so if I let someone into my shop and they're not wearing a mask, I can get fined. But if I walk down the street and I don't wear a mask, I won't get fined.
Yeah, you're an idiot, but you won't get fined.
Well, I do wear my mask, so I'm not an idiot, except when I'm exercising vigorously. And for me, vigorous exercise is a slow trot. Thank you so much for your insights this evening, constitutional law expert Pierre de Vos, just breaking down those new regulations for us.